rules that you have to. I mean, you're not allowed to invent stuff. You're not allowed to totally deviate from the colours in the photograph. You're supposed to stick to it, like Richter said. You know, and this Warholistic, I want to be a machine thing. You're copying it. The whole point is to give yourself over to just following the thing, and there's a discipline to that, and there's a freedom at the end of it, or some kind. But that never really happened, especially not for me.
So with Doig, it was just a maelstrom of different...
He's just to have the freedom. If he had to invent at some point to leave the photograph with no worries, and come back to it if he wanted to, as long as the painting itself worked, and it didn't have to be relate per se to any previous painting or anything that might come after it, and if it did, fair enough. It was this ad hoc.
So is it fair to say then that Doig had, because what's central with Richter is a concentration on the photograph
above everything else.
As an object.
Yeah, to rid himself of the artistic persona.
But not just like the photograph as an image or a picture, but the photograph and the phenomena of happy snaps and holiday snaps and
bourgeois
and police mugshots.
Bourgeois modes of representation.
That object. But then in the final analysis you get alienated by the coldness of that. But then you go to Doig and he has that. There's evidence in his work of his,
but much more.
The photograph is if you see what I'm saying, right? The photograph is still there. We're still dealing with that phenomena, but it has this lusciousness and enjoyment that maybe
a childlike glee.
Yeah, that I would say that Bacon and de Kooning have. But when people talk about their work, they equate it with misery and heart.
Totally, because it's all that philosophical language is attached to it and gives it gravitas
or catar.
And,
catharsis
and weight to it, and there doesn't have to be. It can still be quality, and like Doig actually harks back to painters like Gauguin and Van Gogh again.
Let's say that Doig is the photograph plus jizz,
plus just the sheer enjoyment of it.
Plus the I really mean plus the visceral quality of the paint.
Yeah.
So like fucking jizz and blood and everything that people might equate with Bacon and or Kiefer to a certain degree.
So I'd heard of,
in terms of the material, it goes back to the lusciousness and the celebration of the material,
the seduction of which you have to. I think Richter notwithstanding, you have to keep on going back to that. It's there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like every painting's actually been freed up again to do that. And
are you still in college at the time that you see Peter Doig?
No, this is after college, and Richter was after college.
So what was your degree show like in college?
It was mostly monochrome and very severe and
and still heavily under the influence of Richter.
Totally, yeah. And especially his monochrome pieces, not even just Richter, just this part.
Yeah.
Because I like what I was about to say, like I think Richter represents an end of painting, not the end, but a end.
Yeah.
Where he is the thing, and I think that's what he wanted to do and wants to do. And that's fair enough.
To be a kind of cul-de-sac.
Of his own, but he is the end. He's reached his sine non qua, or whatever you want to say, of painting.
And there's no natural successor?
No.
He wouldn't want it.
No. Not along that.
But hey...
But see, I think he's done, he came upon this, and he felt he had to. He had to do this, he had to finish it.
I had the feeling
that
after that, when we left college, all of the painters had this Richter quality to their work.
Totally.
And then immediately afterwards, like the year after us, everybody had this Luke Toymans.
Yes, I knew you were going to say that. Luke Toymans was the next one.
Yeah,
because...
the star was really rising. They actually got him to talk in the college.
He talked to us,
and then the next year, and since then, it's been Luke Toyman. What he was notably absent, I think, is Doig imitators.
Totally. Well,
there doesn't seem to be any of them.
Mark Swords did a piece called Peter Doig type piece, I think, was the title of it.
Right.
And there's a handful of painters, but no, not to the extent, because I think if you see, it's really, a painter like Toymans definitely comes after Richter.
Yeah.
Has a very notable, rigorous style.
Yeah.
Very Germanic, obviously.
Yeah.
Very pale.
Yeah.
Very Northern European light. It comes from... even when they use photographs, even when they use all these modern media, they don't even have to...
There's a horrible coldness.
There's still Northern European light. Yeah. Even if they're not using light. If these guys are making paintings in a studio with a tungsten bulb and no natural light, it just shows...
Let's say, with Richter, you definitely see that Germanic analysis and the dryness. But as you move north to Toymans, you kind of go towards that Swedish...
Yeah.
I can't describe it, a kind of coldness, and the light is all pervasive, but kind of empty and searching at the same time. It's horrible.
Toymans is all
really
emptiness. So for me, I did a lot of stuff trying to fucking capture some kind of deliberate awkwardness, bleached out. Like there's a piece right there. This is one of my Toymans pieces, you might say, something like that.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Very much. Where it's kind of all bleached out. So how did you do it physically?
I just painted it really delicately on paper. This is oil paper. And pulled and stretched every stroke with just oil as an extender to its... almost as far as it could go, but I just couldn't even go as far as I didn't think I had it in me to be the kind of painter that he is.
Why? Hold it up there.
Because it's just so hopeless.
Yeah.
I suppose if you're making as much money as he does, that's
fine.
That's fine. And it's everything, you know. It's post 9/11. It's
what does that mean?
You know what this is, post 9/11 consciousness.
Yeah, but I don't understand.
I don't really know what they mean either, but all these words are always bandied about when you talk about artists like this. You know, I suppose what it means is nihilism. It's nihilism, essentially. Relativism, all these rolled into this justification for... Well, I don't mind. I like a lot of his work, but I don't like how fashionable it became. And like you said, the last time I heard of him in relation to art colleges, and because I knew it was coming that way when we were leaving, because it was just taking root in our graduate year. Actually, he was the new guy you had, and I liked it. And I still like a lot of his work, but it was very dangerous for young painters.
Yeah.
And it's inevitable that someone like him, Doig, would never be as dominant and influenced like that. I think it's essentially like in any field, like his misery is easier than joyfulness or something. Like it's easier, especially for young men and students and young people, because they want to be serious. It's an easier way to be serious as a painter, is to be dark and is to be severe and to be honest, it looks easy to do his paintings. And it looks, you're always thinking, if I could do something like that, if I could have some kind of style like that, where I basically have a process and a formula, where the results are varied enough, but I still have a process and a formula, I'll be set. And in fairness, it is a big bad world, and it's really hard to go out there with a skill like art in a world and try and make a living for it. So you do feel the need to have a process and a formula. You want to know what you're doing, basically. You want to know it when you go into the studio, you're going to have a way of making pieces. And I struggled with that for about 10 years, to try and find a process. I think I went, and that's the same thing with Richter. When any artist you see has a really notable style, you want to have a style. But you kind of get the cart before the horse in that you can't choose a style, like I said earlier, like it's off the shelf. You say, I'll have that one looks good, or even that one's popular right now, so I'll take that style and I'll do that, as if all these styles are available to you like a computer app or an operating system. But they're not. Any style you ever arrive at is going to be different than the one you had in your head, because it has to be. Because it arrives at all these things that can't be any other way. And combined, they form what's called your style. And it's not separate from content or form. It's form and content intermingled and intermelded. And just the evidence of time shot through it all. Because what you spent time doing and what things you just can't get away from. Like.
But you...
That painting over there behind you is kind of... I would have started it as a Richter type painter and then finished it as a Doig type fan. And I'm not sure if it might not even be finished yet.
So let's say you go from Richter, you have a look at Toynan's, but you see Doig and you go, there's a celebratory thing in this that is missing in the other thing.
Yeah,
it's very attractive to me. And
there's lurid colours, there's yellows, purples, all things like that. Like, there's obviously a photograph at the basis of this.
Yeah.
And the original things, it was like very smooth and cool colours like these here. And this started out as just a paid commission for someone who's since kind of forgot about it, so I've continued it for myself. And so then I took it over. I was doing it, if I adopt a kind of a Richter kind of photo style as a commission, it's a good way to operate because people, if you went, I suppose people, if you're doing it for someone and they want you to do a piece based on a photograph that they give you or something, it's just a good way to operate. Because you have a process and you just kind of do the piece and hand it over and get paid. And then when I kind of carried it on just for my own enjoyment, it gets more, and I'm still not sure if it's finished. I might come back to it, I feel like it, in the next year or so. Or something about it is just still not finished, but it shows that progression from being a Richter type painter, almost to a Toynan's type painter, to a Doig type painter.
Yeah, and is it still Doig?
It is, in a way.
See, people may well think it's fucking hell, guy's talking about a painter, all he talks about is copying another painter.
Yeah.
But that's what it is to be a painter.
But I'm talking about in that sense.
But what it is to be a painter is you're constantly dealing with some way of painting.
Totally.
And they're reflected in painters who are current.
Oh, I'm using these names as a shorthand.
So anybody who's like, fucking, what about your own painting, blah blah blah, that's very naive way to think.
It's very naive, because these painters that I'm talking about, they would also have had guys that they would talk about.
You're kind of like saying, I don't know who Bob Dylan is, I never...
Yeah, trying to pretend that you're completely original. I don't even know who these guys are. You're just wrong. Of course you know. And there's no shame in saying, of course you can't help but be influenced by them, either positively or even influenced by not trying to be like them, is being influenced by them. You're doing your work in the knowledge of these guys, and you can't help it. Like, I only say those words to you in terms of this painting as a shorthand.
Yeah.
Richter represents all the types of painters, a whole generation of painters that he exemplifies in one word, and so on. And Doig.
It's not the individual or his work; it's the era of. Yeah. It's the problem of.
Totally.
And it's the every issue that this painter is dealing with
are
the issues that we are all dealing with.
Totally.
So so what did you do after college?
I just tried to. I thought I'd get straight into painting and just have a studio, and I was just raring to go. Say after a few months directly after college, I just started kind of doing nothing.
Yeah, it's a real fucking...
just recovering.
You really drop off. I was in this miserable little studio then in the docks.
Yeah, I was there briefly as well.
But it was,
It took me so long to get there, I'd come in and paint for an hour and then have to go home.
It's very depressing.
It was really depressing.
Yeah.
I didn't have any straight walls.
It's really lonely.
Cold, very cold.
Isolated.
Absolutely.
Miserable existence.
Yeah, so,
and it doesn't, and you think, I'll go to a studio and it'll have the same buzz as college.
As the college studio.
And it doesn't matter.
Because in college people are getting the studio for free.
Yeah.
And it's all fun and it's college, and then when people are sharing studios,
girls and funny guys and fucking booze and drugs.
Yeah.
And the studio.
It's the antithesis of that. It's the flip side. It's just loads of people are renting these studios and then they never come in because they have 2 jobs.
Yeah.
to pay for studios that they never use. So yeah, you know, so I popped in and out of places like that frustratedly, like never getting because of course I didn't realise the kind of ways of painting that I adopted in college needed full-time application.